Brainiac readies to deal with the oncoming Man of Steel and the Main Man, while Metropolis prepares for its first mayoral debate in Superman House of Brainiac special by Joshua Williamson, Mark Russell, Edwin Galmon, Vico Ozio, and Steve Pugh. Brainiac's plans continue to move forward just as the villain planned, and in the interim, he decides to look over the history of Krypton and Zarnia, two worlds both with similar paths yet vastly different outcomes. While this is something that me as a Superman and Lobo fan already kind of know, I appreciate Williamson for reiterating it for new readers to the event, and his focus on similarities are a lot of fun, and I like to see like that diversion path that we get to see here, because a lot of it is focused on Zarnia since we obviously know Krypton's story and how that went, but here we find out what happened with General Chakal, Brainiac's left-hand man, his heavy for this event if you will, and how he and his followers spread chaos across their planet. And it was Miss Tribb, Lobo's 4th grade science teacher, who at one point was kind of like the surgeon who was tasked with cutting out the cancer of these unruly Zarnians. And we learned to do that, she made a deal with Brainiac, who she tries to convince to take Chakal and his followers' city, bribing him with the secrets to Zarnians' regenerative DNA and even promising him the secret of immortality. This is a lot more depth to the Zarnian story in this event than I really anticipated we would actually get. I just thought it was just going to be revealed that Brainiac took one of their cities and like that was really it, and in that city was Chakal, and he eventually just joined Brainiac because he's, you know, a Zarnian, he likes the chaos and the violence, and that's what Brainiac promised him. But I like that there's a little bit more to it, and we get a little bit more backstory with Lobo and how he had a teacher who was actually in on this plan right from the very beginning with Miss Tribb and everything. I think that's a really great callback to that character who's existed since like the beginning of Lobo's time as a character. Of course, Brainiac betrays the Zarnians and attacks their planet, but during this destruction, he witnesses a lone Zarnian trying to save some people, despite knowing that he can't and they will all die, and it leaves Brainiac wondering why this man did this. Why would he act heroically in a moment where he knew it was just futile? And it leaves him racking his brains, wondering why someone would do this, and it leads him to not destroy Zarnia and actually leave the planet for a bunch of years, centuries even, and when he finally does return to try and fix his mistake, he finds the planet has already been destroyed, obviously by Lobo. This is some really great storytelling because it introduces us to something new with all of this General Chakal and the Zarnian stuff, tying it all into Tribb and Lobo's backstory, and it also introduces us to Brainiac's origins and why he wants to do what he's currently doing, why he's trying to find this reason why, this knowledge and power. And I like that it's set up so far in the past and connected to all of these different things, and it just feels organic. It doesn't feel shoehorned in or anything. There's like room for it to have happened here, and that's really quite cool. And it also is great because Williamson uses this as a sort of setup to the main story of the book, which is Mark Russell and Steve Pugh's story, as Brainiac decides he's going to look in on other worlds and see if stuff like this happens elsewhere, and he knows it happens elsewhere, so he goes and looks at Metropolis. Mark's story focuses on Bibbo Bobowski first, who's set up his bar as Perry White's campaign HQ, and he doesn't like people talking badly about his friend's campaign, and we get a great little moment where he's talking with someone, a potential donor who doesn't really know anything about Perry, but will still donate anyway and will help out the cause. Perry, meanwhile, is deep in the campaign trail and not having a very good time, as people have found him not charismatic or a crusader, the two things that his new management team are trying to make him. I just don't know how Mark manages to do it, but he's able to find the comedy in just everything, and it's just real deadpan comedy. There's just so many moments in this issue where it would have been done as more serious tone, where more like a West Wing style. I could see it happening if some other writer came in, but I like that he injects all of this, just these little jokes. Like there's this great one where we find out that Perry is polling very well, but he's polling very well with the terminally ill. that's a funny joke. That's really fucking funny. And Mark just peppers all of this throughout his story and just makes it a pleasure to read. On top of having to deal with people not knowing who he is, and even the Daily Planet not trying to be biased in Perry's favor, Perry also has to deal with Garon Blake, his opponent, who is all about the deportation of aliens, both terrestrial and extraterrestrial. And of course, Mark is quick to lampoon all of the stuff we see daily on Twitter and Facebook and social media in general. People calling everything woke, conspiracy theorists who think there's alien DNA being put in their chocolate milk. This is all the good stuff that he manages to include in almost all of his work, and it's always just so damn good and on point. It never feels like it's out of date or out of touch. It feels like it's right there, right on point. And I don't know how he manages to keep things relevant when these comics are obviously written, you know, weeks and months ago before they're sent to printers and everything. So to keep it all relevant across a timeline like that is no small feat. Over the course of the story, we find out that Garon Blake is like the poster boy for far-right extremists, feeding the misinformation machine, and Perry can see this clear as day, and it makes him wonder why no one else around him can see this as well. It's equally cool that Mark works in the Blue Earth movement stuff Philip Kennedy Johnson brought in Action Comics, building on it and confirming that, yeah, just because their leaders disappeared, the shithead people in the movement didn't. They just found a new leader in Garon. Garon decides to up the ante and challenges Perry to a debate right in the middle of A-Town, the alien refugee part of Metropolis, obviously doing it to make the alien people more uncomfortable, and obviously knowing that it will probably incite violence and panic across the city. Mark has a great way of making really shitty villains. He's done it in all his books. You know, his Jimmy Olsen book had a really shitty version of Lex Luthor who was just slimy and sniveling. And he does it again here with Garon, who in just a couple of pages, you just hate him to his core just because of all the shit he just spews. Of course, he's also based on real life people like obviously Trump, Alex Jones, and he even kind of looks like the guy who leads the Scientologists, David Miscavige. It's really uncanny how much he looks like it when he's up on that stage, you know, banging on the podium and everything. Mark drops the funny political commentary for some real heart-to-heart between Bibbo and Perry about halfway through the issue, and we find that Perry is at his wit's end trying to convince people of something so obvious, and Bibbo, despite being a rather simple man, has some pretty sage wisdom about people wanting things to change, or like not wanting things to change, and he can't understand why people wouldn't want things to change and evolve, because in doing so you get to experience other people's miracles. And I really like how he talks about the Ace of Clubs and how he's never moved on from it, because even though he's there and he's sort of staying the same, the people that come in, the people that come to the bar are always different. It's always a different clientele every day, and they all have their own stories and miracles, and why would someone want to take that away? He just can't understand that. Mark uses this wonderful little story to reignite the fire in Perry, who knows Metropolis like the back of his hand and knows what the city stands for. Of course, the debate goes just as you would think, thanks to Garon's shitheel supporters who try and kill a little alien girl, but luckily Bibbo intervenes and socks one of them right in the fucking face. Despite the debate being a wash, Perry's few words did get through to one man who turns up at Bibbo's bar and decides the hateful rhetoric of Garon wasn't for him, and he wants to turn his life around, or at least hear the other side of the story, which is all Bibbo really kind of hoped for. And in the end, it's a great story about how people are all just trying to get by, and even in the face of dire times, humanity finds a way to connect to each other. And that's something that Brainiac is trying to wrap his head around as we cut back to Brainiac, who's witnessed all of this story happening, and he's trying to figure out that why is this a thing with humanity and people in general, and he can't seem to understand that. And again, it's like this overarching story that Williamson has created for the Superman family, and what we've seen throughout the Superman family, as well as Lex Luthor's family, and of course Brainiac's family, which is family. It's the story of family, and Brainiac is trying to figure out what that exactly is, because he's never had that before, and he's seeing people like Superman and even Lex Luthor get that, and he kind of wants some of it as well, but he doesn't know how to go about getting it, and what we're seeing is his version of trying to get a family and get people around him that I guess care for him in some way. So the bookend chapter of the story is quite a big one, and it has quite a few revelations as it focuses on Amanda Waller, who's busy trying to find Professor Ivo, but the villain still eludes her. Eventually, Waller goes to see her so-called bosses, the Council of Light, who have ironically been hiding in the shadows since the end of Dark Crisis, and we've seen them here and there but never fully. We don't know who these guys are, and Waller doesn't know who these guys are and is pretty sick of it. We do learn that they are the ones who saved her from Earth 3 and returned her to Earth 0, and in exchange she is to work for them. Waller demands to know who the council are, and surprise, they decide to show her, and it's revealed that it's actually all of the multiversal Brainiacs, revealing that Brainiac has been the one pulling the strings from the very beginning, even all the way back in Justice League No Justice, which is going back quite a number of years now. Waller refuses to, of course, bend the knee to Brainiac's will, and it sets them on a path to clash. And it's really interesting because both of them have the exact same goal. They both want to deal with these heroes and get rid of the powered people, so only one of them has power, but it puts them at odds with each other because obviously Waller has no interest in dealing with another alien who will just come in and take over. She doesn't want that. She wants humans to be in control. So this is quite an interesting dynamic for Waller, especially because up until now, and I said this recently in my Suicide Squad Dream Team review, Waller has been kind of going around in circles, and whenever she appears in a book, the writers always just make it known that, oh, she means business now. She's not taking any prisoners. She's the bad guy now. And it's like, yeah, we know that. What's the next thing? How do you progress her character? And I think this is Williamson trying to do that with her as in a setup to Mark Waid's Absolute Power, where he's now got another villain who wants the exact same thing, but of course Waller doesn't want anything to do with him, but it puts a wrench in her plans because she's been working for him this entire time. So I'm looking forward to seeing that a bit more explored. I'm guessing it's going to be in Absolute Power since she isn't really connected to the House of Brainiac main storyline since that's all set in space. But yeah, I'm really excited that they've actually finally given Waller something else other than, hey, she's a bad guy, look at her doing bad guy stuff. It's a lot more interesting than that sort of stuff. For a special, this issue is really a required reading for everyone tuning into the House of Brainiac event. It goes a long way to shore up a lot of different plots, set the stage for the second act of the event, and even hint at what is to come in Absolute Power. Along with a fantastic and topical Metropolis-based story surrounding Perry White and Bibbo Babowski, this was a fantastic and fun read from cover to cover, and I fully recommend it. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.